Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Hello guys, gals, and everyone with sex organs. It's me, your girl, Mariel. I'm your host, and I'm so glad this is my 5th podcast episode. You like that? I don't. I love talking with you all about sex stories, sex history, just anything sex, because sex is what? Hilarious. It's freaking hilarious. And it's also so fun. It's so fun. So freaking fun. Today is the day where for the first time in all 5 episodes, I don't have a personal story attached to it. I've never in my life had an orgy. Never in my life. I've tried so freaking hard, so goddamn hard to have an orgy, but it's always fallen through. People I was so close to, were like, oh, I have the best orgy for you. And I'm like, give me their details. And like, oh, just kidding, we're not doing it. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, how long do I have to wait to find an orgy? God, comment below if you know of any. Or don't. Just don't comment that. I don't know about all that. But obviously not now because it's COVID. But I was so close. This guy that I was hooking up with a couple years ago, at the time he ghosted me. Yikes. But he had told me of this orgy that was happening. He was like, yes, I'll get you in. All you have to do is take an STD test, like obviously show a picture of like your body or your face or whatever. And I was like, okay, it's a little weird, but all right. And then he ghosted me. Yikes. So I never got in. So sad. I was so sad. Maybe it was for the better. I don't know. Maybe they were all weird. Maybe they were all old. I don't know. I've searched far and wide, but it doesn't seem to happen. It just always falls through my fingers, and I get so pissed because I'm like, this is like the one thing I haven't done yet is like I haven't joined an orgy, which is like super simple. Oh well, I can't do that anyways now because it's COVID. No one can do orgies, or you shouldn't be doing orgies because it's COVID season, and that's a recipe for a disaster, what we call a disaster. I'm going to be giving you today the very wild orgies in history, the strange, the interesting, those kind of historical stories. I'm going to giving you some wild stories about current orgies, misconceptions about them, and then I'm going to give you some steps on how to actually like prepare yourself for an orgy. Again, all of this is coming from educational sources or my friends or like people who have actually been to orgies, because your girl has not been to an orgy and I'm very sad about that. But nevertheless, let's talk about orgies, baby. So orgies are classified as a group of people involved in a sexual encounter. They're also classified as excessive indulgence in something, especially to satisfy an inordinate appetite or craving. So honestly, one and the freaking same. Orgies have been around basically since the beginning of time. And how do we know this? Pictures, images, they didn't have like Polaroids back in, ancient Greece. They did not do that. They didn't have that yet. But they did have, like, paintings, frescoes, the literally just like writings on the wall, like testaments from people's stories brought down, oral like stories about these parties, about the amazing times, scribbles. I mean, not only images, but ancient text, stories passed down about the gods of party and wine and all the group sex you can imagine. Really, it's really great stuff. These orgies were not a free-for-all occasion. They were a private, and I emphasize private, function because not everyone was invited to them. Not everyone could get into them. You had to be kind of a certain status. I mean, if you were a peasant, you probably weren't invited to an orgy party. You could have your own orgy party, but you weren't invited to the elite orgy parties. Unfortunately, that the system that they had back then did not allow that to happen, which sad day for all the peasants out there. They didn't get their good nut. Like, that's sad. That's super sad. But they were private parties. And they were occasions that were to celebrate something great. Maybe the end of the dinner, end in an orgy, end of a celebration, end of an orgy. Maybe just start of the party is an orgy. And they were usually the elite, like I said. In my previous episode, I talked about historical sex under the so I talked about sex under the influence, but I gave some context about with historical sex under the influence of drugs. And a lot of them were with orgies. A lot of parties would end in orgies or be centered around orgies. Like in ancient Greece, the deity of wine, Dionysus, I'm probably pronounced that wrong, but his Roman counterpart, Bacchus, were celebrated through private parties with wine and sex. The emperor, Caligula, who was known to throw these fantastical, orgasmic, orgiistic festivities. He was known for that. He was absolutely known for that. And was a pretty short-term ruler. He was liked in a lot of ways, but in terms of like sex and his very openness, but he was very intense. He was a very intense person. He was part of the Roman Empire that was so sexual and influenced a lot of what happened in the public as well. He was all about public parties. Public parties meaning like invite only, but just like open sex. He would throw all these parties and people would have sex with him, and he would have sex with the emperor, and he was a known homosexual. He loved men. So needless to say, he was not a very popular ruler. People did not like him because he was a homosexual, so they definitely killed him because of that, and I'm sure a myriad of other things, but he was known to throw absolutely wild orgies in his homes. It's crazy. After these ancient periods, it comes what I researched is the aristocracy in England taking over the orgy history now. It was called the Hellfire Club, and it was founded by Sir Francis Dashwood. He basically leased this entire fantasy garden where guests would walk right under a naked Venus statue and basically walking through her private parts, and it was just insane. But he went on to build underground tunnels and caves under a hill with cells where groups could fornicate with each other if they wanted to in big open areas, or in private cells for voyeurs who really like to watch people have sex. So he was like, it really wasn't a secret because we know about it now, but like it was part of that elite society where, not a lot of people knew kind of what was going on behind closed doors, but obviously we know now, and we can also imagine now. Rich people have money to do that kind of stuff, so of course they're going to throw large orgy parties. I mean, come on, who wouldn't? In the 20th century, though, the Bloomsbury group lived in love triangles and practiced group sex. Ooh. And for those who don't know who they are, they're a group of English writers, intellectuals, philosophers alike in the first half of the 20th century. This included Virginia Woolf. And obviously we have to add a bit of the 1960s in there because that was truly the definition of free love. Just like the Romans, honestly. Just like the Romans. There was even an island in Italy called the Orgy Island of Zenone. The famous Marquis Casti Stampa held lavish sex parties on this island, so wild that everyone knew about them and wanted to partake. It was just absolutely insane. And of course, we cannot forget Playboy and their domination of the sex industry in the 1960s when they came around. Parties and orgies alike would happen in that mansion, as you can imagine, most likely every weekend. I would be shocked to find if it was like a once in a blue moon occasion. For the first time, currently now, or in like the 2000s, orgies in their glory kind of died down. However, in this new movement that we have where it's more free sex, respect for women wanting to take control of their orgasm, birth control being more readily accessible, gay rights being a topic of priority among our democracy in the United States, but also around the world being, more heavily pressed and fought for. That obviously leads to more sexual discoveries within yourself, within a group, especially with orgies. I feel like we're kind of going back into our, Roman and Greek times where we're really letting loose, and not necessarily elites only, but really embracing the sexuality that we have, really trying to figure out what exactly we want. Yes, this history was super interesting, super freaking interesting. And a lot of it's written and it's passed down from generation to generation, now in our history books, but it's not talked about enough in terms of the actual sexuality and sex that people in history had. Sex is not a shameful, not a dirty thing. And I feel like we don't talk about it enough. So here I am today to talk a little bit about it. Let's get into those strange orgy stories that are written all over the internet. Shall we? A little more of that after the break. Get a little drink, get a little sippy sip of your drink, get some snacks, get some food, and I'll talk to you after the break.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Super excited. My partner just went out and brought back the cheapest bottle of red wine that they can find, aka Barefoot, for $5. You heard me right, at the liquor store. And we're having a nice little glass. It doesn't take much to be fancy. It doesn't take money to be fancy. Fancy comes from within. Luxury comes from the mind. It may taste like pure butthole, but it feels like expensive wine. It feels amazing. Welcome back to the GSMC Sex Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. You know that we've gotten into historical orgies, we've done all that, we've talked a little bit about it. Let's get into some wild orgy stories from Google, from the internet, from people or stories that you really wouldn't think would happen, but here they are. I, like many of people out there, have not experienced an orgy. Let's clear that up. I have not. I've desperately wanted to, but during COVID, couldn't be me. Absolutely could not be me. I heard this one story from a while back about this strange orgy thing. But I did some digging and I finally found it online, so good for me. There's like this famous cult, famous sex cult, cult party? Yeah, let's say cult party in the Silicon Valley with all the tech titans, those that are dominating the tech industry right now in the area, and have this kind of like cult-like, I mean, man, I think that they're kind of a cult, but maybe that's just me. They have this thing going on that if you participate, you really can't back out. That doesn't mean that they're forcing you to have sexual intercourse. It's basically like when you're in, you're in. You're in. And you're not kind of sworn to secrecy, but not really. It's just, it's better if you don't say anything. Who wants to ruin a good time, you know? Men have to be invited, and obviously they can bring along as many women as they want to. But guys can't come along as a plus one, which I think is so stupid. I mean, we live in the 21st century here. People are gay, people are bi, people want to explore, people are asexual, pansexual. Come on, what the hell? Anyways, that's my beef with it. Not that they're like really super exclusive and, you know, are kind of a little bit predatory. Some people would argue that they're predatory. I think that there's a lot of lines that can be crossed when you're with a lot of powerful people. Powerful people can make you do some really crazy stuff, I think, under the influence and under the guise of money, I feel like. But that's stupid. Invitations are shared word of mouth only. And according to those who've actually went, guests, the breakdown of it is kind of like a regular party. It just ends in an orgy, but little twist to it, a little different twist. Being in the Silicon Valley myself, I understand the amount of drugs, you know, both illegal and legal drugs that are in the Silicon Valley. I mean, to play with the big players, you have to have the mentality, the mindset, the body to be with the big players. So with that comes a lot of drugs. But in this kind of like this cult orgy kind of story going on in the Silicon Valley, invitation only, when you're in, there's a lot of drugs involved. So guests arrive before dinner. You know, they have a great dinner. They have a great, nice, plentiful dinner. Again, everything's pretty secretive. They're not allowed to film at all. They're not allowed to film whatsoever. I think they have to leave their phones at the door. In fact, I know that they have to leave their phones at the door, which is pretty hard for a lot of people because the phones are glued to themselves. So that sucks for them. But the last course of the meal, it's always drugs. It's always drugs. It's always like MDMA, Molly. MDMA and E are the same. Molly is like a mixture of MDMA plus like house cold cleaners. I think I did a little bit of research about it because back in the day, I was like, I think I want to try drugs. Obviously me now, super straight edge, not wanting to try a drug in my life is like, hell no. What is Molly mixed with? Hell no. Anyways, Molly, like my last episode on the sex podcast talked about sex under the influence, which is funny because like now we're talking about sex under the influence with orgies and it all really ties around. So they used Molly, or MDMA or E, MDMA, E, same thing. They all basically make you feel good. They make you loosen up a little bit. They make you go a little bit longer, but also just really want to feel touched. That is what that drug does. A lot of people have good experiences on it. A lot of people have bad experiences on it. It's pretty much a mismatch kind of thing, but the alcohol is plentiful there. The drugs are even more plentiful there. They break off into small orgies and have sex all night long and then wake up back in the morning, regroup, say hi, eat some eggs, Benedict, you know, chill out, and then get right back to having sex. So, and drugs again. Let's not forget that. No one is forced to attend. They're encouraged to attend for the people that get invited, but no one is forced to attend. No one will hold your hand to the fire. But I will say, it's kind of hard when you have such a powerful group of people giving you a party, an orgy party. Let's keep that an orgy party. It's not just a party. It's a party that involves sex. Sex to a lot of people is power. And the reason why I want to add this on my list is because lots of lines can get blurred easily. You can not want to have sex with somebody, but their power and what they can do for you in the community, in the Silicon Valley community, is what makes you want to begrudgingly have sex with them. So basically, it's not necessarily consensual. So there are a lot of lines that can be crossed in this kind of environment with big league power players, you know, with a lot of people that have a lot of money, a lot of power, a lot of influence. I mean, hell, I know for a fact a lot of people want to go to those parties so that they can have that kind of power, so that they can, you know, talk shop with a lot of these people. And that is perfectly fine. I do not find any ill will in that, an ill intention. If you do what you need to do to get by. But I do think that for other people who feel pressured into it and feel like they don't have another way to get out, then that's really bad. And the fact of the matter is that it's only elites. It's big league players. It's entrepreneurs, and it's people with lots of money. So it's hard. You get invited if they trust you, and you're going to participate, then you're in. But I think, again, what makes it strange is that the parties are word of mouth, always elite CEOs, COOs, venture capitalists, entrepreneurs. They mingle, they get down to it, and there's always a lot of drugs. There's always a lot of drugs in a fancy house. There's no recording, and you're basically not allowed to tell anybody. I think that it's a little bit sketchy. I know that everyone wants to have their secrets. I know that everyone wants to, you know, feel like they can have some things that are private and not everything is out to the world. But damn, drugs, sex, money. Oh my God. It's like a bad show. That's why I feel like it's pretty crazy, because a lot of stuff does get pretty crazy there. I have searched far and wide for people that have actually went to it, and the only stories that I've heard from there about the actual orgy parties is the negative side to it. And I think that's the reason why they're super wild, is because it still goes on, and it's kind of negative. A lot of them use it for power play. So I don't really like that. This other story comes from Google Deep Dive, and it's about the crazy life of Studio 54. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Studio 54, it is a massive studio in New York City. Craziest studio alike. Everyone is, lines down the street, wrap around. Super popular in the 70s and the 80s. It kind of dying down. It definitely it didn't really age well in terms of the AIDS crisis that went on. It really didn't flourish during that time. But, you know, before that and a lot after the AIDS crisis, it was super popular. But what we're going to be talking about is before then. So orgies happened all the time in Studio 54's basement. There was no doubt about that. Sex, drugs, quite literally sex, drugs, money, power, and orgies happened in that basement. There were people that were employed for Studio 54 whose specific job was to put out mattresses and give like towels and water to people who were there, which I think is super funny. All kinds of people that were there. There were drag queens, there were trans women and men, there were like, you know, not so well-off people, famous people, not famous people. It really was, how they described it was casting a theater production. The people that you let inside of Studio 54, how would they work with the other people that were in Studio 54? The people that you already put in there. It didn't really matter if you were famous or not. It mattered what your personality was. That's why Studio 54 was so great and was so popular, because of the personalities that it had, because of the amount of people that were basically cast to be there. Like, they were interviewed at the door, and if they were a good look, good feel, then you were like, all right, go ahead. So in the studio basements, elites, it was usually for elites, these studio basements. The studio itself where they would party, it's for anybody. But the basements were where a lot of celebrities, where a lot of people with money, people of power would go when they would have their orgies. It was set up like an orgy lair. Like I said, it's just mattresses everywhere. And there was this room called the rubber room that they would have where all the surfaces were super easy to clean, which was, funny enough, a favorite room for the cast of Saturday Night Live, where they would sneak in on Saturday nights after their show and literally just hang out in the rubber room. It was their favorite room. Sex and drugs, lots of it. And they loved that room. It's funny. Again, Saturday Night Live would sneak into the show by climbing up the fire escape to the 5th floor. That's kind of what they would do to escape the rest of the people, obviously from noticing who they were. But I just think that's really funny that they would have to like shimmy up a fire escape to like go to this room that was called the rubber room where they can have as much sex and drugs as they possibly can. It was this hub of people coming all together from all different walks of life. Again, celebrities, trans women, trans men, gay men, straight men, all kinds of people came to Studio 54. And for the elite, it was literally about the orgies. If you had the money, you did it. You went to the basement and you did it. So those were just some of the famous, wild kind of, orgy celebrity stories. It's funny because it's kind of right underneath our noses and we don't even know about it. And there's also not a lot written about it. Kind of had to dive for that. They're only willing to give you so much information. And it sucks because I want all the information. I want to know all about it. I want to know about every single orgy that they've had there. I want to know why. I want to know who was there. I want to know who was having sex with who and who was watching. And I want to know that, but I can't because no one tells me and I have to go research this stuff and there's nothing about it online. So, all right, stick around after the break. I have what actually happens during an orgy. I got a lot of information about that from my friends, from online, from doing a little bit of research. What actually happens? Like, do you all pile on top of each other and start kissing and making out and, have sex? No, it doesn't. Doesn't happen like that. In fact, it actually happens the opposite way. Very slow. But again, more of that after the break. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the show, the GSMC Sex Podcast Show, where I am the one and only Mariel. I'm your host. Remember? Did you forget already? We need to wake you up a little bit. Let's talk about some orgies. Let's talk about actual orgies that have happened. But in case you forgot about what we talked about historical orgies. We talked about wild orgies that you didn't even know happened. And we're going to talk about what actually happens during an orgy. And it's not a lot of
kind of not what you think.
Under,
It's kind of not what you think.
maybe I don't know. Maybe you have a more developed sense of what an orgy actually is from maybe you actually went to an orgy and I didn't, because I suck. I really suck. Like, if you've ever been to an orgy, how the hell do you even know what it's like? Why am I qualified to give you this information? Oh yeah, that's right, because I've done my research. Orgies are not like one big mosh pit of sex. You see this oftentimes on screen. I know for a fact that you have. Don't tell me you haven't. Like, not everyone is kissing each other and all on top of each other, because that's just insane. Does not happen. There are a lot of things people, including myself, that get wrong about what orgies actually are. It literally can be a place where you're having sex with 2 people and like 5 people are watching. That's an orgy. You can be doing solo play to yourself while 7 other men and women are around having sex with each other and themselves, and it's still an orgy. I feel like as long as these people are around you consenting to sex, who are also engaging in sex in some way, it's an orgy. It's an orgy. You also don't have to participate, like, by being penetrated to be in an orgy, to say that you were at an orgy. That's not how that works. That's not how sex works either. Sex can be whatever you want it to be. We already know this. But here we are. Like I said, found this on Reddit. People who have actually been to orgies multiple times and have said what they really are. So, if you have 20 people participating in the orgy, maybe 2 of either sexual, like sex, either male, female, or people with male sex organs, people with female sex organs, are going to be attractive to you, or even be attracted to you. So it's kind of hard. It's a mesh pot of a bunch of different people who look so different from you, or whatever you even want. So no one could even be your type there. So that's another thing that you kind of, it's kind of like going into a guessing game. It's like, what am I going to get? It's like C's candy. Oh my God. It's like C's candy. It's like those C's candies that you do not know what you're going to bite into. And some of them are like, oh, that's really good. And others have like that gross cherry taste to it that I just immediately throw out or I give to my partner because she likes them for whatever reason. She's super weird. Ugh. But anyways, it's like C's candy. It's exactly like that. The next one. They take forever to get going. I'll say it. I have talked to a lot of people and they've said the same thing. They take kind of forever to get going. It's a slow build of kissing and touching and feeling. Then penetrative stuff happens, or then more things start to happen. More, maybe BDSM starts to get introduced. Maybe more people start to have sex with each other, like all together. It's not the way that it happens where it's just like a boom, jump right into it. It doesn't really happen like that. The other thing, you feel absolutely greasy from lube. Like, you got lube on your butt, you got lube on your genitals, you got lube in your hair, on your arms, on your legs, in your fingers, in your mouth. You have lube everywhere. Lube is obviously so important for many reasons, just to really get going the friction and make sure nothing is super painful, if you're drier down there. But damn, lube everywhere? I mean, like, I didn't even imagine that when I was thinking about having an orgy. When you're thinking about having an orgy, it's like this super orgasmic, like, playground full of adults that are just, like, going at each other. And then when you actually think about it, it's going to be super smelly, it's going to be super messy, and it's going to be super loud, too. I don't know if I just kind of realized that right then and there. Oh my God. There's going to be a lot of fluids everywhere too. Semen, lube, maybe like glitter if you're into glitter. Maybe wine is everywhere. I mean, your body's going to be covered in everything. And then the other thing is the pecking order in and of itself. What people have told me, the people to usually go first are the ones with the larger penises. And you can listen to, one of our podcasts here at GSMC, Sex Podcast Network, the Sex Podcast. There's an episode, Does Size Matter? And she kind of debunks the fact that it really doesn't. Size does not matter. So, but again, in this context, some people most people, I guess, are really into the fact of large penises. So in saying that, the first people to go are usually the people with the largest penises. And it kind of sucks because it feels like you didn't get picked for dodgeball. You know, it feels like when you're a kid and people don't pick you because you're short, or people don't pick you because you look weird. It's not your fault. It's not. It's society's fault. It's what we've ingrained in ourselves. But nevertheless, sorry, male presenting people, or anybody with male sex organs, it is about size. I'm so sorry. But again, that's what they said. That's what they have said. And also, there are sometimes, honestly, more often than not, people get kind of left out. People get left out. They get left out of the big, giant sex fest, or the smaller groups around it having sex together, but not all having sex together. They get left out of that. And it's kind of sad. I think a lot, what kind of a lot of people said was either the ones that are shy, either the ones that didn't, immediately partner up with somebody, or either no one really found them that attractive, which is so sad. Everyone deserves a nut, no matter how beautiful you look. I think everyone's beautiful. Everyone deserves a nut. It's so sad. If I were in an orgy, I would be like, come, pull my hair. Come over here, pull my hair. No one's playing with you right now. Come here. I'll give you some plays. Come on. That sounds super dirty. And I did mean it like that. So I really did mean it like that. So usually women will start to engage with each other first. I feel like that's just kind of a normal thing, a normal thing that people set, and a normal thing that women set for each other is we feel comfortable around each other. So in terms of exploring sexuality and exploring, just really getting things going, women usually are the first to play with each other. That's what a lot of people others have said. And that's just kind of a fact. It's just women are the first to play with each other. And then when they do invite men over, men with the larger penises are the people to be picked first. But it's not about that women want to either show off, or they want to feel like, I don't know, but what I'm kind of gathering from the evidence that people have given to me is that women don't mind expressing their sexualities more. Women are more open to being gay or being bisexual than men are to being bisexual and gay. So if it was like a party full of a bunch of women and only a few men, women would be fine exploring their sexuality with each other. There's not a lot of societal criticisms that have been ingrained in us for a long time. Men encourage it. In fact, men love it. That's what society has kind of given us, is that men love this. So please go forward. I would love to watch you guys have sex with each other. So I feel like that's kind of where it's coming from. And, one of the last things that it can be kind of awkward. You're with people you don't know. You really don't know. You don't know a lot of them. Maybe you weren't even invited to the Facebook group and you can't even see any of them. And it's just kind of, you're going in blindly. Or maybe you know only some of them and don't really know the other ones. You're naked and you're in a room full of people that are hot, sweaty, smelly, and having sex. There's going to be some awkward moments. But I think an important thing to know is that a lot of laughing happens, It's not just a serious thing where, we're all having sex and we all love each other and we're all doing the dirty, or, it's nothing like that. It's like you guys are all just trying to be there, be together, come together and have this amazing time with each other. I think that there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, I love that. I love that for everybody who's been to an orgy. If you can't tell, I'm incredibly jealous of the fact that everyone has been to an orgy before COVID. I want to get my group nut. I want to go and come in front of a group of people. Is that so hard? Those are some common misconceptions broken down for you. Again, orgies aren't that serious. it's not that serious of an event. Everyone's just together. Not everyone's in the heat of the moment, but it can be super awkward sometimes. And also it can be super uncomfy at times because you really don't know what to do with your hands. You don't know who to start out with. Like if you see a Rebecca or a Sandra in the corner over there and you want to go have sex with her, but she's already having sex with 2 other people or 2 men at the same time, like, what do? Do you wait around? Do you help assist? Do you want my advice? Too bad, you're going to get it anyways. Find someone to just slide it in. Not sexually, just slide yourself in. Like, ask permission and dive in. Just do it. I mean, ask for their consent and make sure it's okay, but maybe be their chair. Maybe be her chair while she's having sex with somebody, or maybe be the person to pull her hair, or maybe be the person to, feed her food if you want that, if you're into that. Start off slowly. Start off subtly. I think, again, a common misconception is that everybody's in the heat of the moment. Everyone's so intense. Once you partner up with somebody, you can't leave. You can't do anything else. And it's like, that's not really that true. Everyone's at a kind of a different pace all throughout it. I'm assuming. Again, I've never been to one, but from what people have told me, everyone is at a different pace. So just do it. Just slide in their DMs with permission. Their physical DMs with permission. All right, let's head to a break. I need another glass of wine. All this talk of orgies is making me honestly so thirsty. I don't know about you. It's making me super thirsty. Grab a drink or 4, and I'll talk to you after the break.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar. All right. How we doing, ladies? Gentlemen, everyone with sex organs, how we doing? Last portion of this episode coming right at you. So sad. Not to worry. On Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, out every Wednesday and Sunday, there's a new podcast. New podcast that comes out. So thankful for that. So thankful for the twice a week updates for these podcasts. They're so great. So happy to. You see what I did there? I'm like praising myself, and I'm praising myself. That's gross. If you would leave a comment on wherever you're listening to, tell me something good, tell me something bad, tell me something I need to work on. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from any of you. Type a heart, give me your name. I don't know. Tell me what you had for breakfast this morning. I would love to hear it. So we've talked about what orgies are, what the history behind them is, the sexy history of Romans and Greek orgies, the wild orgies that happened in the past or quite recently, or the orgies that happen for regular people and what they're actually like. And now we're going to talk about 10 tips for your next orgy. After COVID, obviously. Keep it in your pants, nasties. Don't do it during COVID. Bad. Number one. Prepare your mind for what is about to happen. You're about to be in an atmosphere with men and women and non-binary folks alike, so I feel like it's in your best interest to be prepared for the multiple different types of personalities, different bodies, different wants, different needs. Just prepare yourself that you may not be the center of attention. I know that I need to tell myself that quite literally every morning. I am not the center of attention. And that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow, and I'm so sorry about that. But you have to tell yourself that. Number 2,
Consent is so important. For the first thing that you need to do is before touching anybody, you need to ask. You need permission. You need to get their consent before you do anything. That should have been number one. Why didn't I do that? Number one is consent. Number two is not everything's about you. Sorry. Maybe prepare yourself for the different amount of personalities. This is sounding so attacky. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to attack any of you. I don't know why I'm attacking you. But consent is important, and also knowing that there are other people around you that exist. That is very important. Very, very, very important. Everyone is coming in with the intention to kind of have sex, but it's still important that you don't cross anyone's boundaries as to what they want. Another part of consent is asking what they want, asking what they're looking for. Are you looking just to kiss? Are you looking for penetration? Are you looking for oral? Like, what are you looking for here? That is also super important to ask too, because people come to orgies with a wide variety of feelings, I feel like, from the research that I've done. People come to orgies to fulfill many different of their fantasies, and maybe penetration is not one of them. So make sure consent is always the first. And then second is, personality and not being the number one in the room. Number 3, bring your own condoms. Male and female. Don't assume that anyone is going to be providing any of this for you. Just take into account your own safety and your own precautions. We wouldn't want anything to happen, and just make sure you bring your own male and female condoms. Also, communicate to the group, if there is a group chat, what you do want. What do you want? Do you want them to bring snacks? Do you want them to bring cantaloupe? You want them to bring hot Cheetos, milk, coffee, alcohol? What do you want them to bring? Always ask what other people are. I mean, it's just like another party. Imagine that you're going to someone else's house for a party, and the first thing that you would want to know is, should I bring anything? Should I wear something? I mean, what's the proper attire for it? Obviously, orgy is going to be nudie, but it's like, what do you bring? What do you want to bring? Bring your own condoms first and foremost, but ask other people what they want you to bring, or if, you want them to bring something. That's super important. Number 4. Being a part of an orgy doesn't mean you have to have penetrative sex. Again, like I said, sometimes people just want you to kiss or rub on you, and that's okay too. Not everyone is going to be comfortable getting penetrated or even getting your needs met, Some people might not want to do whatever you want them to do. So it's just important to understand that people come to orgies for different reasons. So, number 5, know the STD status around the people around you. This is a must. This is an absolute must. Everyone needs to have a clean bill of health for you to partake in sexual intercourse with them in any kind of capacity. I mean, it's important to know, it's important that people tell you their sexual status. It's important to know the sexual status of people in terms of, have they contracted any sexual, infections, sexually transmitted infections, an STI? Like, do they have HIV/AIDS? It's so important to know that. I mean, that in and of itself, not telling somebody that is, in my opinion, should be a crime. It should be a crime, because you're willingly putting somebody in danger when they didn't even know that they needed to be cautious of that in the first place, that they're trusting you with their body and their mind, and you're absolutely demolishing that. So I really cannot stress this enough. Know the STD status of those around you. It's not a shameful thing to have an STD. It's absolutely not. It doesn't make you any less of a person. It doesn't make you dirty. It doesn't make you filthy. Nothing like that. But it is important that you tell your partners whether or not you have an STD or not. And if you do have an STD, it's important to treat that. It's important to go to the doctor, and it's important to treat that. Communicate others in the group of your STD. Check. This is serious stuff. This is super serious stuff. I cannot emphasize this enough. Number 6, know your limits. Know your friggin' limits. If you don't want to do something, communicate it. Communicate in the way that you can with that. If you don't want someone touching your partner, communicate that. Communicate your limits with other people. Before you walk in or have before you walk into the party, before you sign up for this, maybe know more about your limits before going into it, so that you don't walk out butthurt, or you don't walk out sad, or you don't walk out feeling like lines have been crossed. Just know your limits. It's a super good rule of thumb to have. Number 7, if you're not feeling it, like I said, walk out. Bid everyone a good evening, a happy sex life, and just leave. You will know when something is off. If you don't like the vibe of the party, if you don't like the kinks that are happening in this party, if you don't like the sex that people that are having in this party, if you see anything wrong, leave. Leave. Tell somebody that you're leaving, or don't tell anybody, and just leave. There's no point of you to cross boundaries that you don't want to be crossed, to stay there any minute if it makes you uncomfortable, or you see something that you don't like. Leave. Maybe notify the host, and then just walk out. Number 8, wash your body. Wash your damn body. Bathe, 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 bathe. Cannot stress this enough. Bathe. Wash your crack. Wash your vagina. Wash your genitals. Wash underneath armpits, your feet, the cracks of your feet. Every part of your body will be getting touched if you want it to get touched, or accidentally if it gets touched, and you can let that person know that that wasn't okay. But every part of your body will get touched if you want it to. So save the other person some trouble and a little bit of grossness, and, wash your body in a way that is comfortable for you. That doesn't mean like scrubbing down hardcore, peeling off your skin, wearing it as a jacket. It more means like just wash between your toes, wash your genitals, wash your butt, like the normal things, so that everyone can have a nice, happy, fun little time. Isn't that so fun when a person on a podcast has to remind you to bathe? That reminds me, I need to take a shower. I need to go do that. Number 9, if you want a break, communicate it. Don't stress yourself out over getting everybody off. Don't do it. That's a complete waste of time. You can't provide everyone's nut in the house. You have to take some time apart when it's a little bit overwhelming, and just kind of like go off to the side, maybe have a couple snacks, maybe get some water, chat with some people, call your mom, maybe do some fun stuff, and then revisit it. Don't try to be a hero necessarily and try to get everyone's nut. That doesn't also mean that you need to try super hard to get your nut. You don't need to do that. It's best if you communicate when you're overstressed. If you're stressed out, just take a break. If you're super exhausted, take a break. If nothing is really working out for you in the way that you want to, take a break. Maybe come and revisit it if you want to, or like number 7, just walk out if you're not feeling it. But the important part is that you are allowed to take breaks. You're allowed to stop what you're doing, even if it means stopping everybody, stopping the whole party that's happening, and just take a break. Number 10, wear something or bring something that makes you feel comfort, or that makes you feel good. If it means wearing high heels the whole time and walking on someone's back, obviously with consent, then do it. Bring something or wear something that makes you feel super empowered, sexy, comfortable, good. It's about you feeling good, you have to take that into your own hands. You absolutely do. Coming into it, you have to feel good. Because if you don't feel good, then there's no point of coming. There's no point of going. Eat chocolate if it makes you feel good. Smoke some herbs, quite literally herbs, not cannabis, but herbs. Smoke some aphrodisiac, some maca root if that makes you feel good, if that makes you feel calm. Do the things that make you feel good, so it can enhance your situation for other people, so it can enhance your performance with other people. Do what makes you feel good. That is it for today. That's all I got for you. I love doing this. It makes me happy. It makes me feel so good. Again, leave us a comment in Apple Podcast or Spreaker or wherever you're listening to this to, YouTube even. Leave us a comment. Tell me what you like to hear. Tell me if you didn't like a certain part. Tell me if you want me to change something, or if you want me to do something on a specific topic that you really like. Because I love that. I love hearing what people have to say. I mean, gets me really excited. It makes me happy to do this. I'm excited about what's up next, but you're going to have to stay tuned for that next week. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, the GSMC Sex Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe and do all those fun things, and make sure to stay sexy. Make sure to stay sexy. God, I hate that. Until next time, I'm your host, Mariel Tamashi, and I'm horrible at outros. Bye!
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.